Report schools out in Chicago for a second day as public school teachers there continue their first strike in 25 years. Almost 30,000 teachers and their support staff have walked out over reforms sought by the city's powerful mayor, Rahm Emanuel, who's President Obama's former chief of staff. The teachers union called the strike Sunday night after months of negotiations failed to resolve demands for pay raises, better classroom conditions, job security, and evaluations. On Monday, over 10,000 teachers, parents, students marched in the streets of President Obama's hometown. Many called on Obama to get involved. This is teacher Michelle Timble.
I just think that President Obama needs to be a part of this. We're his hometown, third biggest district in America, and he's like this with Rahm, and he needs to get it done. He needs to put some pressure on Rahm and make it happen, get us back in the classrooms. We'd love it if Obama joined us on the picket line, but I've got to say, he didn't show up for the workers, the union workers in Wisconsin, so we're really hoping that he shows up for us.
Meanwhile, the strike has become fodder for the 2012 presidential race. Republican nominee Mitt Romney issued a statement saying he's disappointed with the teachers, that Obama's, quote, chosen his side in this fight by previously supporting the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney said Obama has not taken a position on the situation.
More broadly, that our principal concern is for the students, and his principal concern is for the students and families who are affected by the situation. And we hope that both sides are able to come together to settle this quickly and in the best interests of Chicago's students. But beyond that, I haven't got a specific reaction from the president. For more on Monday's march and the historic strike, we go to Chicago. We're joined by Democracy Now! Correspondent Jaisal Noor, who's been covering public education for the Real News Network and Free Speech Radio News. Welcome back to Democracy Now! Jaisal, tell us what's happened in this first day of the strike as we move into the second.
Well, Amy, tens of thousands of teachers and their supporters marched through downtown Chicago yesterday. It was a sea of red, one of the biggest marches I've ever seen. And, you know, people are really excited about this strike, about the opportunities to have their voices heard. You know, a lot of the education policy in this country comes from the top. From people that have little or no experience in the classroom, little or no experience in the low-income communities that are disproportionately affected by these reforms. And it was moving to see Chicago united behind the teachers that are, you know, not just fighting for themselves, but they're fighting for their students. And that's something that a lot of people in Chicago and around the country have been waiting for and are really prepared to get behind.
Explain how the union leadership, this new union leadership, came to run the Chicago Teachers Union, who they are, who Karen Lewis is.
That's a really important point that we should not, that is often missed in this discussion about the Chicago Teachers Union. Karen Lewis and CORE, the Caucus of Rank and File Educators, they're a group of teachers that came together to fight school closings, to organize communities to oppose school turnarounds. That is a policy that was started in Chicago with Renaissance 2010 and No Child Left Behind, and it's devastated communities. It's led to the layoffs of hundreds of teachers, and the previous union leadership was not fighting, was not organizing the community to oppose these policies, and this is, sort of from the ashes of those schools that were closed, these group of teachers came together, and eventually in 2010 they were able to take control of the third largest school district and the third largest teachers union in the country, and this has national ramifications because it's really this is the first time in a long time where teachers are working hand in hand in collaboration with community members. Who really, it's the parents, it's the students that public education is for. So they're working hand in hand, and they're fighting an uphill battle. They are fighting the most powerful forces in the country that have an agenda of privatization, of school closings, of increasing testing. But this force is something to be reckoned with.
Jaisal, I want to play a short comment from Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel about the teachers' call for a fair contract. I'll play that in a moment. But why don't you introduce it by talking about the significance of Rahm Emanuel, the former chief of staff of President Obama.
Right, Amy. So Rahm Emanuel, he was a political, he was part of the Daley administration, closely linked with Mayor Daley in Chicago in the last decade, and he's a very corporate top-down. His approach is very corporate top-down. He has no regard for teachers or for parents. He sank so low as to pay protesters to voice opposition to the communities that were fighting school closings earlier this year. That's kind of what the teachers and the communities that are supporting the strike are fighting against.
This is Mayor Emanuel's comment.
This offer is respectful of our teachers, it does right by our students, and is fair to our taxpayers.
Jaisal Noor, what offer?
That's a key point, because the media, even at the news conference on Sunday when the strike was announced, the media was asking, the president of the Chicago Teachers Union, Karen Lewis, so this is just about the money, right? This is just about the pay increase. Why don't you take the money? And Karen Lewis' response was, this is not just about the money. This is about classroom conditions. This is about having ACs in school. It's about having reasonable class sizes. It's about not linking teacher evaluations, teacher pay to student test score. And so this offer, the union is willing, they've got the communities behind them, they've got the teachers behind them, and they're not going to accept an offer unless it addresses all of their demands.
Jaisal Noor, I want to ask you about one of the high schools you've been reporting on in Chicago, the Orokio Mesa, one of the students at Social Justice High School, describing the steps taken by her new principal after the school's longtime principal was fired last month, with a little explanation.
Right away, the new principal, Ms. Velasquez, she took away 3 of our AP classes, and she pretty much messed up our whole schedule. She put in remedial classes, and pretty much that's an insult. That's saying we're not smart enough. We don't need to belong in those AP classes. We're stupid. And so right off the bat, I feel that her choices not only reflected her personal decisions, because she tried, of course, to rationale with us, oh, look at the test scores, they're doing pretty bad. And when we would point out to her saying, we have a positive trend in the test scores, we've actually increased in AP enrollment, we've increased in AP passings in general. And also it relates because her decisions to destabilize the school are not only on her behalf, but it's pretty much she's listening to her superiors.
That's Orokio Mesa, a student at Social Justice High School. Jaisal, as we wrap up, put this into the context of the teacher strike.
So the story of Social Justice High School is the story of Chicago, is the story about the strike. It's a microcosm for it. What the student was describing was this top-down approach to education, not listening to the students. The principal that was dismissed, she wasn't a longtime principal, but she was a beloved principal, one the community picked. She was dismissed. 2 longtime teachers, 2 founding members of Social Justice High School, a school that was created after a hunger strike, after community organizing because of a lack of a school in a Mexican-American neighborhood in Chicago, in an impoverished neighborhood. They were dismissed because these teachers asked questions. The students kind of had their own strike earlier this year. They refused to speak in school. They had a walkout. They had a sit-in. Very similar to what's happening across Chicago now in hundreds of schools. So this is a story of how communities have to struggle. They've had to struggle and come together all across Chicago to get very basic services. Now even those are being taken away, but Rahm kind of messed with the wrong school. This is Social Justice High. These kids are well organized. They have the support of the community. The union backed them, and these were some of the students that were out in the strike supporting the teachers now. They got their teachers rehired. They got their advanced placement classes reinstated. They're still fighting to get their principal back, and they're still fighting to get community control over this school. If I have just a minute to just continue, this school does not have a local school council. Almost every school in Chicago does have a local school council. The most radical experiment in democratic education in urban schools started in 1987. Chicago is the only urban school district where communities and teachers have a voice in the budget, who the principal is, how the school is run. Across the country, people are asking how to fix urban education. Chicago has the answer. The top performing schools in Chicago that are low income are schools with local school councils. I visited a school that was physically falling apart in March. The walls were falling apart. The hand railings were falling off the wall. But they had community input. They had teachers that were working with parents, grandparents, in one of the most impoverished, heavily, this community has tons of crime, and yet they were the 7th highest performing school serving a low-income community in Chicago. So there's lessons here to be learned about public education, about urban education, and how communities and teachers and students can work together to have their voices heard.
Jaisal Noor, I want to thank you for being with us, Democracy Now! Correspondent, covering the teacher strike in Chicago.